You know, I think when you are trying to build a .NET application, you'll find yourself researching what's the best way. And what I often find is a lot of methodologies in which really take you outside of the paradigm that .NET developers would do. So, for example, if I were to use AWS, I would find tutorials like this one, for example. It's an excellent tutorial, don't get me wrong, and it shows you a methodology of using .NET that is not necessarily like what I would call native in a sense, because it has like profiles and published to AWS Lambda, and it doesn't have the um, either the minimal API controllers or the controllers, the MVC controllers that are very, that we normally use in .NET. So let me provide you an example, right? So if I am deploying to Azure instead of AWS Lambda, I would simply go to create new project. I would select Web API, right? So let's just select Web API right here, and let's give it whatever name. It doesn't really matter. Let me go to sample, right? And I'm going to select a folder, press next, where it doesn't really matter right now that this stuff. It's just to show you like this is the paradigm that most .NET developers are used to, which is a program. You register your middleware and your configurations and your DI, and then over here you have a controller with a API controller, and then you have your constructor over here that you do the dependency injection, and then over here normally I use this as a router, and use the pattern of request response pattern, but we'll talk about that later. um, and then over here return a standard response, right? And then we then execute this or compile the program, and we get probably a Swagger page, right? Because we become accustomed to Swagger and to Open API specs and all these things. And then I get the weather forecast and I can try it out, right? Now, when you find yourself Googling on the web, they're talking about AWS Toolkit for doing an extension, and that gives you a new project template. The project template doesn't resemble anything that we're used to as .NET developers. So, and then you find other tutorials that then showcase similar, I would say, ways of doing things. Um, but there is a new way that is taking more popularity and is very well documented over here. However, I think it has yet to catch some adoption. So I think what I want to do is I want to go through a real world API, and what I mean by that is, how are we going to secure it? How are we going to do the CI/CD? How are we going to replace the app settings.json? How are we going to handle certain requirements, like I can't use SSM parameter store, how to create the profiles for AWS, and then certainly just package it all, because like these one-on-one tutorials really are not conducive to someone actually developing their own APIs and deploying them to production in a way that they can be maintained. Now, a lot of people are going to see this, and I'm actually going to use one of the projects that I am being contracted to do, in order to show you step by step how I'm going to go from the initial request by the client all the way through the writing of all the code and all the automations, and then the end result of that. It's going to be a quite simple project, but because it's going to have all the best practices, it's going to be quite a little bit of effort. So get ready and strap in, and let's build a real API production ready.